Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, students. This is Dr. Abarca again. Hope you've enjoyed the first 2 weeks of class where you have been introduced to the periods of American literature as well as the elements of fiction, which you exercise through the short story, through the film, What's Eating Gilbert Grape. It is time for us to move to the third goal of this class, which is the practice of doing a close reading textual analysis. In module number 3, I have provided 10 steps for things that you need to look for, explore, as you do a reading of a passage, a close reading of a passage. It is important for me to highlight that this exercise goes beyond the confines of a literary class. The skills that you would develop as you continue to become a close reader of passages is that you can learn to read critically between the lines of any passage, any story, anything you read. Having said that, I would like to do a little exercise with you, all of us together, hopefully, on doing a close reading analysis of the opening paragraph of John Steinbeck's The Chrysanthemums. I would invite you to go along with me, to practice with me this exercise. So if you please have a moment to take the story out, gather the story of John Steinbeck, The Chrysanthemums, and read with me the opening paragraph. I will not use all 10 aspects provided for you in this module, in part because not all of them are applicable to every single passage. Some are not. I have selected a few of them, and the first one, which is applicable to all of them, is the selection of a passage, and the fact that you need to read it a few times and maybe even out loud, at least once or twice out loud. Reading out loud does help provide the general feeling that the passage evokes. Having said that, I'm going to go ahead and read this passage aloud. For the moment, please, if you're looking at the screen, do ignore the colors that are in this passage. I will explain that in a moment. Here it goes. The high gray funnel fog of winter closed off the Salina valleys from the sky and from the rest of the world. On every side, it sat like a lid on the mountains that made the gray valley a closed pot. On the broad, level length floor, the ground plows by deep and left the dark earth shining like a metal where the shares had cut. On the foothill ranches across the Salina River, the yellow stubs fields seemed to be bathed in a pale, cold sunshine. But there was no sunshine in this valley now in December. The thick willow stalks along the river flamed sharp and positive yellow leaves. After we read this, the next step is to paraphrase, basically in our own words, say what we think this passage means. For me, it suggests a cold day, a gray day. There's a feeling of sadness and depression and desolation in this passage. The earth is like metal, which suggests the coldness. But it also suggests some level of hope, or a glimpse of hope in this very great world. That's my paraphrasing of the passage. The next step is to look at the passage carefully to figure out how do I came with that paraphrase? What evidence is there in the passage itself that provides this possible paraphrasing? And we do that by first, the second step of what I gave you is to look at words that we might not be quite familiar with. In this particular passage, I'm pretty familiar with all the words that are used here. However, in blue, here, I have marked a few words that I wasn't 100% positive how they were used in the content of this passage. So even when you do know the words, but they're used slightly different than the common way of using it, I would highly recommend that you go ahead and find out what those words are. The second thing I did was to look at images that might reinforce this idea of gloominess that I'm suggesting that is in this paragraph. And in green, I have highlighted that. The high grade phantom fog, to me, suggests that idea of gloominess, the fact that something is closed off, that is kept away from the rest of the world, the idea of a closed pod rather than an open one. The idea of cutting, pale, cold, to me, those suggest issues of this gloominess in terms of the imagery. In red, I have highlighted, what I have highlighted here in red, which you can see here, river and sunshine. I highlighted them in red because I'm using that to talk about symbols. However, another thing to keep in mind, is the repetitionness of words. Rivers is a symbol because water is a symbol, and water is a symbol of birth or rebirth. It's a symbol of life because it sustains life. And sunshine is a symbol of a new day, a new beginning. So, because I'm saying that the passage does suggest an idea of hope, to me, the hope comes from those kinds of words, those kinds of symbols. In yellow, I simply have highlighted certain words that get repeated. And I have to ask myself, why are those important? Once again, the morning, in the morning when the sun's coming through, or at least trying to come through, there's this yellow color in the sky. That could suggest that idea of the hope. After we've done all this in terms of looking at words, rhetoric devices, which is the word I gave you, repetitions of words, I'm also looking at irony. And to me, there's a very interesting irony in this passage. And the irony is framed or is presented in the fact that there is this positive. It ends in a positive. If you read here, the positive yellow leaves, the opportunity of growth. So this growth, this hope, this longing, unfortunately, to me is ironic because it is, in fact, limited to a world that is close, or to a space, I should say, to a valley that is close to the rest of the world. Okay? Having done all these steps, the next thing is to formulate a theme. What could be a possible theme in this passage? And one that I have come up with is the theme of the hope or the desire for change, the longing for change in a world that is great and limiting. To me, that's the theme, the desire for change in a world that is very closed in. As we finish the passage, because this is the beginning of the story, we need to ask ourselves, what can we sustain this theme? What other elements in the story suggest this? Who is looking for this or longing for this change? Is it a man? Is it a woman? How does that affect the idea of longing, depending on the gender of the person? This is all I have for now. I hope you benefit from this short description, and I do look forward to seeing your close reading passages of this story and many others. Thank you for listening, and we'll be in touch.